New York, in the early 19th century, was a city on the edge of transformation. Manhattan and Brooklyn were separated by the East River, a ribbon of water both vital and treacherous. Ferries were the only link between the two, and as the population exploded, those ferries became overcrowded, unreliable, and dangerous. Thousands of New Yorkers depended on them daily, yet the dream of a bridge, a permanent, ironclad connection, had seemed impossible. And that impossibility would fuel one of the greatest engineering feats the world had ever seen. The story of the Brooklyn Bridge begins not with steel or towers or cables, but with a man named John Augustus Roebling. Born in Germany in 1806, Roebling was a visionary engineer. He arrived in the United States in 1831, carrying with him revolutionary ideas about wire rope and suspension bridges. At the time, bridges were modest, functional structures. Roebling envisioned something monumental, a bridge that could span the East River, linking two cities and redefining the skyline. His vision was bold, daring, and unprecedented. Many said it was impossible, but Roebling thrived on impossibility. Early in his career, Roebling designed several notable bridges in Pennsylvania and Ohio, mastering the techniques of wire rope suspension. By the 1850s, New York City's growth was pressing the problem. Brooklyn was a separate city, growing faster than Manhattan could accommodate. Trade, commerce, and everyday life were constrained by the limits of the ferries. City leaders, merchants, and engineers debated solutions. And then, in 1867, Roebling proposed the unthinkable, a suspension bridge over the East River, one that would not only carry pedestrians and horse-drawn carriages, but also trains. He called it the East River Bridge, but the world would come to know it as the Brooklyn Bridge. The proposal was met with skepticism. Critics said the river was too wide, the currents too strong, and the technology too untested. Others doubted the materials, the wire, the iron, the masonry, could withstand New York's brutal weather. And yet Roebling's calculations were meticulous. He insisted on a bridge that would combine the elegance of suspension cables with the strength of stone towers. It was an audacious hybrid, a marriage of beauty and practicality. He imagined the towers rising like cathedrals, their cables forming a web that could carry the weight of a growing metropolis. But Roebling's vision came at a personal cost. In 1869, while surveying the site in Brooklyn, disaster struck. His foot was crushed in a ferry accident, and infection set in. Within weeks, John Roebling died. The city mourned the loss of its greatest bridge visionary. The project, however, did not die with him. His son, Washington Roebling, inherited both the responsibility and the weight of expectation. Washington Roebling was no stranger to engineering. He had trained under his father and shared the same meticulous attention to detail. But unlike John, Washington was now thrust into a storm of political, financial, and technical pressures. Investors demanded results, city officials wanted certainty, and the public grew impatient. For a man who had only just stepped from his father's shadow, the East River Bridge would become a personal crucible. Even before construction began, the challenges were immense. The East River was a dangerous waterway, its tides shifting unpredictably. Foundations had to be sunk deep into bedrock beneath the river, a feat no one had attempted on this scale in America. Engineers debated methods, arguing over caissons, pneumatic systems, and the dangers of working underwater. Many warned of death and disaster, and history would show that their fears were well-founded.
Yet, amid the danger, there was vision. Architects and designers imagined not just a bridge, but a symbol of progress. The Brooklyn Bridge would not merely connect two boroughs, it would connect ambition with achievement. It would stand as a testament to human ingenuity, endurance, and courage. And for a city in the midst of transformation, it promised hope. By the late 1860s, funds were secured, plans were drawn, and the first piles were prepared to descend into the river. The city, restless and impatient, watched as a monumental dream began to take shape. People whispered about the bridge that will conquer the East River. Skeptics predicted collapse. Optimists envisioned triumph. New York, a city that had survived fires, cholera, riots, and relentless immigration, now faced a new kind of challenge, one that would test not only engineering, but the human spirit. This bridge would almost destroy the man building it. Within months of construction, Washington Roebling would fall victim to a mysterious illness caused by prolonged exposure to pressurized air in the underwater caissons. The bends, as it was called, left him paralyzed from the waist down. For months, he could not leave his home, yet he remained the mastermind of the bridge's construction. He communicated daily with engineers, his wife Emily acting as his eyes, ears, and voice on the construction site. Emily Roebling's role would prove legendary. She translated technical language, supervised workers, and addressed city officials. In an era when women were largely excluded from engineering and public life, she became indispensable. Without her, the Brooklyn Bridge might never have risen from the East River. This was more than a bridge. It was a family legacy, a story of sacrifice, ambition, and extraordinary perseverance. Construction began in 1870, and New York City watched with a mix of fascination and fear. Workers descended into the East River, maneuvering massive caissons, gigantic wooden boxes that would sink into the riverbed, allowing the foundations to be built underwater. These caissons were airtight, filled with compressed air to keep water out, but they were also deadly. Many workers suffered from decompression sickness, known then as the bends, a condition so poorly understood that the first victims often faced paralysis or death. Washington Roebling, confined to his home after falling ill from the caissons, oversaw the construction through letters, diagrams, and constant consultation. His eyes on the site were his wife, Emily, who had stepped into a role no woman in the 19th century had ever occupied in engineering. She met with city officials, briefed workers, and addressed city officials. In an era when women were largely excluded from engineering and public life, she became indispensable. Without her, the Brooklyn Bridge might never have risen from the East River. This was more than a bridge. It was a family legacy, a story of sacrifice, ambition, and extraordinary perseverance. Construction began in 1870, and New York City watched with a mix of fascination and fear. Workers descended into the East River, maneuvering massive caissons, gigantic wooden boxes that would sink into the riverbed, allowing the foundations to be built underwater. These caissons were airtight, filled with compressed air to keep water out, but they were also deadly. Many workers suffered from decompression sickness, known then as the bends, a condition so poorly understood that the first victims often faced paralysis or death. Washington Roebling, confined to his home after falling ill from the caissons, oversaw the construction through letters, diagrams, and constant consultation. His eyes on the site were his wife Emily, who had stepped into a role no woman in the 19th century had ever occupied in engineering. She met with city officials, briefed workers, and monitored the bridge's progress. Emily Roebling became the public face of the project, translating her husband's complex engineering vision into action. Without her, the bridge might never have reached completion. By the 1872, the first tower in Brooklyn began to rise, a monumental column of granite that would anchor the bridge. Its twin on Manhattan's side would follow, but the East River had other plans. Strong currents, storms, and unpredictable ice flows made every operation precarious. Workers battled freezing waters, falling debris, and the constant threat of drowning. Death and injury were not uncommon. Newspapers occasionally reported accidents, each story fueling both horror and curiosity among New Yorkers. The bridge was taking shape, but at a human cost that was almost unimaginable. Meanwhile, tension in the city mounted. Skeptics called the project Roebling's folly. Critics said the design was unsafe, the materials insufficient, and the plans overly ambitious. Political battles erupted over funding and safety inspections. Each delay drew ridicule, yet every milestone, every completed pier, every section of cable was met with awe. The bridge was more than infrastructure. It was theater, a public spectacle, and a test of faith in progress itself. The cables were another story entirely. Roebling had invented a method of spinning wire cables, weaving thousands of steel wires together to form a single, strong line capable of supporting immense weight. Workers stood atop high platforms, guiding wires through pulleys, measuring tension, and fending off wind gusts that could snap the lines like thread. It was painstaking, dangerous, and revolutionary work. At one point, a miscalculation caused several wires to break and send a section of cable into the river. Miraculously, no one was killed, but the incident nearly halted construction and shook public confidence. The Brooklyn Bridge would also survive one of the most bizarre public panics in New York history. In 1883, before the bridge officially opened, thousands flocked to walk across its span. Rumors spread that the structure was unstable, and panic erupted as a crowd surged, convinced the bridge might collapse under their weight. People stampeded in terror, yet the bridge held firm. This early test, both literal and metaphorical, proved that Roebling's calculations were not just correct, they were extraordinary.
The human drama didn't end there. Workers' lives were filled with constant danger. Falling from heights, accidents with machinery, and the bends claimed many. Some of the men who helped raise the bridge spent weeks in hospitals recovering from compressed air injuries. Others carried lifelong scars. Yet despite every challenge, the bridge grew. Stone towers soared, cables stretched taut across the river, and a new icon began to emerge against Manhattan's skyline. Emily Roebling remained indispensable throughout. She learned the intricacies of engineering, strength calculations, tension loads, and cable dynamics, skills no one expected her to master. City officials consulted her on technical matters, and newspapers marveled at her role, calling her both a lady engineer and a symbol of determination. She bridged the gap between Washington Roebling's confinement and the practical realities on the construction site, ensuring the bridge's survival during the most perilous years. By 1877, the towers were completed, their Gothic arches rising majestically over the river. The suspension cables, thousands of wires bound together, extended from Brooklyn to Manhattan, shimmering in the sun. Pedestrians could finally envision walking across the East River without a ferry, and the city could see a future where commerce, travel, and daily life would change forever. Yet danger remained. Even as the bridge neared completion, workers fell victim to accidents, and engineers worried about the long-term stability of the cables. Critics continued to question the bridge's strength, predicting disaster. Each day was a test of human skill, courage, and endurance, and through it all, the city watched, aware that what was being built was more than a crossing. It was a statement, a challenge to the impossible. By 1883, more than a decade after John Roebling first dreamed of a bridge spanning the East River, the project was finally approaching completion. Manhattan and Brooklyn, once separated by ferries and frustration, were about to be united by stone, steel, and human determination. The city buzzed with anticipation. Newspapers chronicled the final touches, sidewalks laid, cables tensioned, and towers polished. New Yorkers couldn't help but imagine stepping across the bridge, gliding over the water, and witnessing the skyline from a perspective few had ever seen. The opening day, May 24, 1883, was a spectacle unlike anything the city had ever experienced. Tens of thousands of people poured onto the bridge. Horses, carriages, pedestrians, all moved together in a river of excitement. Bands played, flags waved, and dignitaries from both boroughs gathered to celebrate. The Brooklyn Bridge was no longer just an idea or a construction site. It was a tangible triumph, a testament to the vision of John Roebling, the perseverance of Washington Roebling, and the extraordinary contributions of Emily Roebling. Yet even on this day of celebration, danger lingered. Crowds were massive, and the wooden walkways groaned under the weight of thousands of footsteps. Fearful that panic could erupt, police and city officials struggled to maintain order. And as with much of the bridge's history, there was a moment of drama. P.T. Barnum, the famous showman, led a parade of elephants across the bridge to prove its strength. Each elephant stepped deliberately, as if the city itself were testing the bridge's courage. The bridge endured, unshaken. Its success was proof that vision, skill, and persistence could conquer even the most formidable engineering challenges. The Brooklyn Bridge quickly became a symbol of New York's ambition. It wasn't just a crossing, it was a statement. Tourists flocked to walk its span, capturing the arches, cables, and towers in sketches and early photographs. Artists painted the bridge as a monument to human achievement, while writers celebrated it in essays, poems, and newspapers. The bridge inspired pride in a city that had survived cholera, fires, and waves of immigration, proving that New York could undertake the impossible and succeed. The bridge also reshaped daily life. Commerce and commuting changed overnight. Ferries, once the lifeline of the East River, became secondary to this elevated artery of movement. Brooklyn became more connected to Manhattan, altering real estate, trade, and population patterns. Workers could live farther from their jobs. Merchants could transport goods faster and safer. The bridge, in effect, transformed the rhythm of the city itself. But the triumph did not erase the human cost. Over a dozen workers had died during construction. Many more suffered injuries or permanent disabilities from falls, accidents, or decompression sickness. Washington Roebling never fully recovered from his time in the caissons, confined to his home and reliant on Emily's intelligence and courage. Yet their combined efforts had created a structure that would endure for generations, a monument not only to engineering, but to human determination and collaboration. Even decades later, the bridge continued to captivate. Its Gothic-style towers, soaring cables, and sweeping walkways became a defining image of New York City. It inspired new generations of engineers, architects, and dreamers to imagine possibilities that seemed impossible. And it remained a reminder that progress often demands risk, sacrifice, and extraordinary vision. When it first opened, the Brooklyn Bridge was the longest suspension bridge in the world, with a main span of 1,595 feet. Its construction required innovations in materials, techniques, and management that set the standard for modern bridges worldwide. Cities around the globe looked to New York as a model for what could be accomplished with ambition and skill. By the end of the 19th century, the bridge had cemented its place in the life of the city. It had survived storms, heavy traffic, and skeptics. It had connected boroughs, economies, and communities. And perhaps most importantly, it had fulfilled a dream born decades earlier in the mind of a German immigrant named John Roebling. His vision, carried forward by his son and safeguarded by his daughter-in-law, had transformed both the physical and cultural landscape of New York. The Brooklyn Bridge, by the dawn of the 20th century, had become more than a piece of engineering. It had become a symbol of New York itself. Pedestrians, horse-drawn carriages, and streetcars once dominated its wooden walkways. By the 1920s, automobiles began to cross in growing numbers, and the bridge evolved alongside the city it connected. It was a living structure, responding to the demands of a metropolis that refused to stand still. Yet with growth came challenges. Heavy traffic, weathering, and wear began to take their toll. Engineers faced constant maintenance problems, repairing the steel cables, towers, and roadways while keeping the bridge operational. The structure had to be resilient not only to the forces of nature, but to the unrelenting pressure of human activity. The Brooklyn Bridge, once a marvel of its time, had to prove its durability over decades of change.
The bridge also became a cultural icon, appearing in photographs, films, and literature. Its Gothic arches and suspension cables were celebrated as uniquely New York. Artists painted it as a monument of ambition. Writers used it as a metaphor for connection, progress, and the human spirit. It became a meeting point for the city's imagination as much as a physical crossing. The bridge was never just a symbol of triumph. It faced danger again and again. Fires broke out on the wooden roadways. During heavy storms, high winds caused cables to sway dramatically, unnerving pedestrians. Traffic congestion became so severe that engineers had to devise new lanes and regulations to ensure safety. The structure had to adapt continuously, a reminder that even the greatest achievements demand vigilance and care. During the 1930s and 1940s, the Brooklyn Bridge witnessed profound social change. Immigrants streamed across it daily, moving between neighborhoods, jobs, and opportunities. The bridge was not just steel and stone. It was a conduit for human stories, ambition, and survival. Its presence shaped the rhythm of daily life, transforming commuting, commerce, and culture. Families crossed it to reach work, schools, and markets. Soldiers marched across it during parades. Artists sketched its cables and towers. Its image became inseparable from the identity of New York. By mid-century, the bridge faced modernization pressures. The introduction of heavier vehicles, subway expansions, and the increasing complexity of urban planning challenged its original design. Engineers reinforced towers, upgraded the roadways, and implemented traffic management systems. Despite these changes, the bridge maintained its historic character. It was a rare example of infrastructure that combined function, beauty, and history, standing resilient amid the relentless growth of one of the largest cities in the world. During the 1930s and 1940s, the bridge witnessed profound social change. Immigrants streamed across it daily, moving between neighborhoods, jobs, and opportunities. The bridge was not just steel and stone. It was a conduit for human stories, ambition, and survival. Its presence shaped the rhythm of daily life, transforming commuting, commerce, and culture. Families crossed it to reach work, schools, and markets. Soldiers marched across it during parades. Artists sketched its cables and towers. Its image became inseparable from the identity of New York. By mid-century, the bridge faced modernization pressures. The introduction of heavier vehicles, subway expansions, and the increasing complexity of urban planning challenged its original design. Engineers reinforced towers, upgraded the roadways, and implemented traffic management systems. Despite these changes, the bridge maintained its historic character. It was a rare example of infrastructure that combined function, beauty, and history, standing resilient amid the relentless growth of one of the largest cities in the world. During the 1970s, there was serious debate about whether the Brooklyn Bridge should be replaced entirely. Some officials argued that modern engineering required a new structure capable of handling far more traffic. Preservationists, historians, and the public pushed back, emphasizing the historical, cultural, and symbolic importance. Their efforts ensured that the bridge remained intact, celebrated as both a functional roadway and a national treasure. Even today, the Brooklyn Bridge is a testament to enduring design. It has withstood earthquakes, storms, and the pressures of over a century of continuous use. Its iconic silhouette continues to define the skyline, reminding New Yorkers and visitors alike of the audacity, innovation, and resilience required to build something lasting. The Brooklyn Bridge today is more than steel cables and granite towers. It is a living monument to human ambition, resilience, and ingenuity.
Over 140 years have passed since its grand opening, yet it continues to carry millions of people every year, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles alike. The bridge remains a central artery of New York City, connecting boroughs, economies, and communities. Its presence is a constant reminder that vision, perseverance, and courage can transform both cities and lives.
Throughout its history, the bridge has faced threats and challenges that would have defeated lesser structures. Fires, storms, floods, and the relentless wear of time tested its strength. Yet each challenge was met with human skill and ingenuity. Engineers reinforced powers, replaced cables, and preserved the bridge's historic features. Restoration projects in the 20th and 21st centuries have ensured that the bridge remains safe, functional, and true to its original design. Every repair honors both the past and the future, a bridge between generations as well as boroughs. Culturally, the Brooklyn Bridge has become inseparable from the identity of New York City. It has been immortalized in photography, film, literature, and music. From Edward Hopper's paintings to movies like Once Upon a Time in America, the bridge symbolizes ambition, romance, and the promise of possibility. Tourists and locals alike walk its span, capturing views of Manhattan's skyline and Brooklyn's neighborhoods. Each cable, each tower, each walkway tells the story of countless lives that have crossed it and countless dreams it has carried forward. Emily Roebling, the woman who ensured the bridge's completion when Washington was confined by illness, lived to see the bridge celebrated as a national landmark. Her contributions, once overshadowed by her husband's legacy, are now recognized as critical to the bridge's success. She was not just a helper, she was a pioneer, a visionary, and a symbol of the bridge's human story. The Brooklyn Bridge is, in many ways, a monument to human courage as much as to engineering. In modern times, the bridge continues to inspire. It hosts marathons, parades, protests, and celebrations. Street performers, photographers, and filmmakers use its spaces to create art that reflects the city's energy. Its towers, rising like Gothic cathedrals, continue to frame the Manhattan skyline, a reminder that the dreams of one man, carried forward by his family and countless workers, can outlast generations. It is a bridge that has survived disasters, skepticism, and the relentless pace of New York itself, standing as a testament to what humanity can achieve. As we reflect on the Brooklyn Bridge, it becomes clear that it is more than infrastructure, it is history in motion. Each stone and cable carry stories of ambition, loss, courage, and triumph. Every footstep across its span connects the present with the visionaries of the past. For a city that never stops evolving, the bridge remains an anchor, a symbol of possibility and a reminder that the extraordinary can emerge from the ordinary. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history of the Brooklyn Bridge, let me know in the comments which New York landmark or city you'd like me to explore next. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of the people, structures, and dreams that shaped our world.